Hi everyone, my name is Kendra. Welcome to my channel, Kay Reads and Crochets. Today I wanted to share with you some books that I think just give the perfect fall vibe. So to me, a fall vibe is one of two things. The first fall vibe is like warm, cozy, soft things. I'm thinking like burnt orange palettes. I'm thinking fluffy blankets. I'm thinking pumpkins. I'm thinking baking, apple picking, like thick woolen socks and like tall boots, like that kind of vibe. Fall vibe number two is like dark and spooky, like wrought iron fences, tall candles in like stone hallways, owls hooting in the night. You're walking along a path and like wet leaves blow across the path. That's the other fall vibe that I get. For me, fall is very much like two sides, same coin kind of a deal. I tried to find a variety of books that I've read so far that I also really enjoyed that fit either one or both of these vibes. Feel free to drop your own recommendations in the comments and let me know what books fit your perfect fall vibe. First up on my list of books that fits the perfect fall vibe is the Ruinous Love Trilogy by Brynne Weaver. The first book is called Butcher and Blackbird, and the second one is called Leather and Lark. There's a third book coming out. I want to say it's coming out next year, but it's called Scythe and Sparrow. These are both romance books. We are following a couple as they fall in love over their mutual interest of multiple deleting. And those are Brynne Weaver's words. Those are not my words. Butcher and Blackbird kind of took the internet by storm last year. I remember seeing everyone freaking out about it because there really wasn't anything like this book, and I would argue that there still really isn't anything like this book. It is a dark romance, but it's dark romance with humor. I read Butcher and Blackbird literally in like 3 hours. I was visiting a friend's house and I couldn't fall asleep, and I went downstairs and literally just pulled it up on Kindle Unlimited. I stayed up super late. I read it all in one go. I couldn't put it down. This series definitely fits more of like the dark and spooky fall vibe, but almost with like a horror movie twist. Like, it's dark, it's twisted, it's a little gory, and there's some suspense and some mystery, but there's also like really sweet love scenes and like really interesting characters. Also, the first scene of Leather and Lark literally takes place on Halloween. Like, what else could you ask for? Definitely want to warn you to check the trigger warnings for this book. It is dark and spooky. There are some dark themes. There are some heavy conversations. It's a dark romance, so it's gonna get a little spicy. Please keep that in mind. There's also some like, not like weird warnings, but like they're a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Some of the trigger warnings are a little bit silly. I'm glad they're there. And I think trigger warnings in general are super important. Like, you can tell Brynne Weaver was just trying to have a little fun. I'm glad they're there because I cannot look at cookies and cream ice cream the same way that I did before I read these books. So I'm glad they're there, but like, please take them seriously. These books can get a little dark. I had so much fun with these books. They are definitely unique. These books are a silly, goofy, fun time. They're masquerading as a dark and spooky series, and I just think that's really, really fun. Next up, we have another series, For the Wolf and For the Throne, also known as the Wilderwood duology by Hannah Whitten. For the Wolf is a magical, mature Little Red Riding Hood retelling where Red is the key to keeping her kingdom safe by offering herself to the Wilderwood. Red is the younger of a set of twin sisters, and there is an ancient curse on her land that requires that the first daughter is for the throne and the second daughter is for the wolf. The world building in this series just screams dark and spooky. There's a haunted woods, there's a cursed land, there's magic, there's lots of dead trees. So many dead trees. The entire cast is trying to figure out, why are there so many dead trees? And that is just so spooky to me. I really, really, really liked the romance between Red and the wolf. It was very sweet, and it's almost a little bit like Beauty and the Beast retelling, which is my favorite fairy tale. So of course I loved it. But there's also this whole side story of the wolf and how he's kind of losing himself to this curse, and he's almost being taken over by his beast form. He also has servants that have been cursed to remain with him in the castle. It's very Beauty and the Beast, and I loved it. I'm a little biased. For the Throne follows Red's twin sister, Neve, as she is journeying through this cursed land alongside a rogue king who is trying to restore magic to the realm. I did not enjoy For the Throne as much as I liked For the Wolf. I can't really explain why. I think maybe I just wasn't really as interested in Neve's side of the story. I feel like Neve's role in For the Wolf was more interesting than her role in her own story, if that makes sense. She just wasn't as exciting of a character for me when she got to her own story. You may enjoy the duology as a whole more than I did, but I really liked For the Wolf on its own. This duology doesn't have a lot of spice or really dark themes, so if you're more into romantasy, but like the fantasy part, like the world building and the characters and the magic, this might be a good series for you to check out. Next up, I have One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. This duology has taken over my TikTok FYP, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, that's going on my TBR. And then it sat there for like a year. I finally got around to reading it in September when I went to a friend's house for a 24-hour readathon, and I absolutely loved it. My friend and I were going to read it at the same time, and she immediately moved on to the second book. I haven't had a chance to move on to the second book yet, so I can really only tell you about One Dark Window, but I really, really liked it. One Dark Window also kind of hits that same dark and spooky vibe as the Wilderwood duology, but with a little more magic and a little more nightmares. We follow Elspeth, who has a monster living inside her head. She calls him the Nightmare, and he protects her from danger. He speaks to her in her mind, mostly in riddles, and he's been with her as long as she can remember. The magic in this world is based on a set of magical cards. They're almost like tarot cards, and there are different suits that give different powers. But all magic comes with a price. If you understood that reference, I'm baking you cookies. The Nightmare is helping Elspeth recognize these magical cards, and she begins working with members of the royal family in order to collect an entire set. The most powerful cards are also the rarest. Everyone has their own motivation for gathering these cards. They're really having trouble tracking down those last couple of cards, and they need Elspeth's help. She's the only one who has this power to recognize them, to feel them, to kind of sense them, especially because they're running out of time. This book gives me the vibe of stone castles, foggy mornings, crystal balls, haunted woods, like all of that. There's magic, there's adventure, there's mystery, there's nightmares, and there's a little bit of romance. I absolutely loved the magic system in this book. I am a sucker for vengeful magic, magic that demands retribution and payment, and One Dark Window just nails that so well. I'm also super happy that I loved the first book so much because I bought the Barnes & Noble special editions before I read either book, and now I don't feel bad about buying them because I think I'm going to be very happy with them. But also, like, have you seen those exclusive editions? Stunning, gorgeous, 10 out of 10. No notes, they're beautiful. Next on the list, I have The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I have my special edition illustrated version of The Hobbit here. I am obsessed with this edition. I think the illustrations are absolutely stunning. I also have my Second Breakfast Book Club t-shirt on as well. Very much in a Lord of the Rings mood right now. I love Brat Summer, I love Hot Girl Summer, but my heart is truly in Hobbit Girl Fall, okay? Like, give me singing, dancing, tables full of food, any day of the week. The Hobbit in particular gives me warm and cozy fall vibes. I'm thinking cinnamon and pumpkin scents. I'm thinking thick fluffy blankets, a warm fire in the hearth, a nice book to curl up with, very much pre-adventure Bilbo Baggins. The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings series are one of the classics of the high fantasy genre, originally published in 1937 and 1954 through 55. respectively. The Hobbit follows Bilbo Baggins as he journeys alongside a company of dwarves trying to reclaim their homeland from a terrifying and territorial dragon, Smaug. On that adventure, he comes across a golden ring that can make him turn invisible. And after some strong arming from the wizard Gandalf, he passes that ring along to his nephew. In The Lord of the Rings, Bilbo's nephew Frodo sets off on his own journey to destroy that ring after everyone realizes that it is the one magical artifact left behind by the Dark Lord Sauron. And it's what Sauron needs to return to power and take over Middle-earth. Now, that is a gross oversimplification of the plot, but I'm assuming that most people are kind of familiar with the story, or at least the Peter Jackson films, and if you're not, I will happily make an entire video about why I love The Lord of the Rings and why I love that trilogy, and I can tell you so much more about it then. Bilbo and Frodo both celebrate their birthday on September 22nd, which usually coincides with the fall equinox. This year it was actually on the same day, and many Tolkien fans also celebrate the 22nd as Hobbit Day. I've always loved the Lord of the Rings movies, and the first glimpses that we get of Rivendell, I think they always feel so fall-like to me. The color palette and all of the trees. When I think of this series, I absolutely think of fall. Hopping back over to the romance genre, we have Bride by Ellie Hazelwood. If you start singing as soon as you rip off August's calendar page, Bride by Ellie Hazelwood is going to be for you. This is for the Twilight girlies who are now in their 30s. Misery is a vampire, almost mafia princess who has been betrothed to Lo, who is the alpha of a local werewolf pack. This arranged marriage was meant to sort of keep the peace between the two groups, and while their marriage is fraught with tension and secrets, Misery and Lo come to understand that they're fighting for similar reasons, even if they're not fighting for the same side. This book has lots of fun characters, humor, romance, and of course some spice. It is an Ellie Hazelwood book, so like, you know what you're getting into. When I first heard about this book, I feel like this was being marketed as like baby's first Omegaverse novel, which if you've never heard of the Omegaverse, what's it like being well-adjusted to society? Jokes aside, it is way less spicy and smutty than I imagined it to be. It's about as spicy as your typical Ellie Hazelwood. If you've read any of the Steminist novels, it's really not much more spicy than any of those. Even though this book is set in modern times, I can totally see these characters in like a stone castle with lightning flashing in the background. It very much gives off those dark and spooky vibes. And there is a sequel coming out. I don't know when, but I'm very hyped about that. Next up is the original cozy fantasy duology, Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bone Dust. I absolutely love this series, and it is very much full of fall vibes. If you are into low-stakes fantasies with magical creatures, yummy recipes, and sweet-as-pie romances, this series is for you. This took Book Talk by storm in the last few years, and I absolutely ate it up. Pun entirely intended. You're welcome. Legends and Lattes follows Viv, the orc, who is an adventurer, but she decides to settle down and open up a little cafe. She meets some lovely residents of the town and faces different kinds of adventures than what she's been used to in the past. In Bookshops and Bone Dust, we see Viv on bed rest after an injury in a sleepy little seaside town. She works with a local bookseller to sort of jumpstart the local bookstore and also solve a mysterious magical artifact. I absolutely loved Viv as a character, as well as all of her adventures. One of the things that I really love about this series is that Legends and Lattes was published first, but Bookshops and Bone Dust takes place first chronologically. However, I feel like you can read these books in either order and still be able to follow along. The only real common thread between the two books is our main character, Viv. But other than that, they don't really reference each other too strongly, and I don't think that you have to read them in publication order, which I think is really fun and interesting. These books tend to drag on a little bit. I felt like both of them could have been like 50 pages shorter, but they definitely fall under the fall vibes. All things baking, cozy, and of course, pumpkin spice lattes. I don't have a physical copy of this next book because I borrowed it on Kindle Unlimited, but it is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. Nothing says spooky like a thriller mystery, and Frida McFadden is the queen of thriller mysteries. This book absolutely took over my life while I was reading it. I could not physically put it down. I was enthralled, and I'm not normally a mystery fan, so I was very surprised and impressed. Our main character, Millie, is hired by Nina and Andrew Winchester as a live-in housemaid, but she soon realizes that the family is not as picture perfect as they seem. Millie does not get along with the matriarch Nina, who seems to be intent on making Millie's job and life as difficult as possible. But Millie can't afford to lose the job, so she tries to make the best of it. The best of it kind of ends up turning into the worst of it. If you love fall for all of the scary movies, all of the psychological thrillers, this book is going to be right up your alley. Now, including this last book might be cheating a little bit because it's not exactly fall vibes, but I just finished it and I absolutely love it, and I feel like I have to tell you about it. September 15th through October 15th is National Hispanic Heritage Month, and I really wanted to highlight this book and this series because I am immediately hooked on it. So this is Anna Maria and the Fox by Liana de la Rosa. Anna Maria and the Fox is a historical romance about 3 Mexican young women who escape French-occupied Mexico to go to Victorian London. Anna Maria is the eldest of the Luna sisters, and she has been under the thumb of her domineering father for her entire life. Her father is very high up in the Mexican politics of the time, and so when Napoleon comes in to occupy Mexico, he sends his daughters away to keep them safe. When Anna Maria and her sisters escape to London, she really gets her first chances at freedom and choice, but she still feels really obligated to her father thousands of miles away. Across the ballroom, she sees Gideon Fox, who is a member of parliament and the grandson of an escaped enslaved woman from Charleston. His major goal in parliament is to enact legislation that would end the Atlantic slave trade throughout the world. Anna Maria and Gideon are immediately drawn to each other and romance ensues. I absolutely loved Anna Maria and Gideon as characters. They are so rich and compelling, and I was really impressed and excited about the other Luna sisters, Isabel and Gabriella, as well. I could give you a whole video about my frustrations with interconnected standalone series, particularly romance ones. My biggest issue is that we normally spend so much time with the first couple in a series, and I feel like the rest of the characters don't really exist until we get to their books. They're mainly just like decoration for the first couple that we're learning about. We usually get like a little bit of setup for these sequels, but it's just like 2 people staring at each other a little too longingly. That was not the case for this series, and it's got me so hyped for the sequels. In Anna Maria and the Fox, there is a scene where Anna Maria and the middle sister, Isabel, go to a science lecture. And while they're there, they run into Gideon Fox and Captain Dawson, who we've already met and we've kind of already had him set up as Isabel's love interest, but we haven't really spent a ton of time with him. Isabel pulls Anna Maria aside and basically says, I don't like that Dawson guy. I overheard him having a conversation with his buddies and it made me upset and uncomfortable. I don't think we should be associating with him. And I was immediately intrigued because we didn't see that conversation happen in Anna Maria's book, but I know we're gonna see it in Isabel's book. I felt like we got the perfect amount of breadcrumbs to entice us to read the future books, and I cannot wait to get my hands on them. Isabel's book is already out. It's called Isabel and the Rogue, and Gabriella's book is supposed to be published in August of 2025, and I will definitely be picking them both up. there is my list of books that I think fit a fall vibe, plus a little bonus. I hope I gave you some good recommendations, and feel free to drop your own in the comments below. I know this list is very romance and fantasy heavy, so there's going to be some gaps that need to be filled in, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you get to go jump in a pile of leaves, or do a haunted house, or go apple picking, or whatever you love to do during fall. Bye!